We are outside Haley, Idaho on the Sawtooth National Forest, and we are working on a project to understand if we can use sheep to hopefully target cheatgrass, which is an invasive species here, to reduce its presence on the landscape and help restore sagebrush ecosystems. Cheatgrass is an annual grass, meaning that it has a life cycle where it just lives and reproduces and dies in 1 year. And it's a big problem because it tends to compete really well with native vegetation, especially after a wildfire, and it's also very flammable. And so once you get it coming into these ecosystems, they burn more frequently, and then cheatgrass is the first thing to come back. So we're using sheep because there are other targeted grazing studies on cheatgrass, and they have used cattle, and cattle tend to eat grass, and so that makes a lot of sense. But as cheatgrass is moving up into these higher elevation areas, we have this more rugged terrain where it's maybe not as suitable to have cattle out on the landscape. And so we wanted to try and see if sheep could eat it. And not only are they maybe better suited to the terrain and the steepness of these hillsides, but also they have herders with them all the time, herders and herding dogs. And so that's a really big difference from cattle. And so instead of just putting them out in an area and hoping that they'll graze the areas that we want, the herders can actually really direct them to the patches of cheatgrass or to our measurement plots, and so that we can have a lot of control over exactly where they can go. And that's been really neat, and I think a really big asset of being able to work with sheep.
I think maybe the biggest challenge that we have is doing it as natural as normal grazing practices would be. So letting the sheep graze through the plots, do it naturally, and then exit the plot, and then later come back and do it again. They won't just congregate in one area, they will spread out and they will graze. And then we can manage them a lot different than cattle. There's no fences out here. We can manage it also with water. We can move the water troughs around and kind of manage it that way also.
So this project started when I was talking with the range specialist for the Sawtooth National Forest about what they most needed to tackle here, what some of their biggest issues were. And it became really clear that cheatgrass was a big issue that they're trying to treat with herbicide and restoration, but they just can't cover the extent that it's invaded across the landscape. And so we were interested if we could use the sheep that are already here grazing during the summer, but change the timing and intensity of their grazing to try to really focus on cheatgrass. And so we found some places on the forest that had pretty high invasion levels, and also had people who owned sheep who were permitted to be here that were also interested in participating in this, so that we could use their sheep and do it in as realistic of a way as possible, so that we could use what we learned to possibly scale this up as a management practice across the forest and potentially elsewhere.
During the summer, we have a data collection period where we collect plant and soil samples from each of our study plots. There are 32 of them. And then we can sort of analyze plant and soil data for a different number of response variables to see what are we doing to the ecosystem. Are we grazing the cheatgrass and reducing it? What are we doing to other plants out there, so non-cheatgrass plants, because we don't want to disturb them? And then what are we doing to our soils, and are we changing anything that could have potential consequences for the ecosystem? Whether we like it or not, whether we want to ignore it or not, there are real challenges out on the landscape, like invasive vegetation, like increased prevalence of wildfire, that really affects us all. And so research projects like this are really helping us to find the answers to some of those questions that will really better the lives of people who live in these ecosystems.
Getting to work with people who are willing to try new things and see if we could make a difference in the world is just, it's really motivating to me, and I'm really grateful to be a part of that. And I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful place to be, and to be able to be out here with students learning, yeah, it's the best part of the job.